literacy, data system support, and I will be hosting this training today. We are going to talk today, the title there is incorrect, I apologize. Today we're going to be focusing on static reports, and just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. So if you haven't already done so, please make sure that your microphone is on mute. If you have any questions throughout the training, please try to put them in the question and answers box. I have disabled the chat because I've realized that when we use the chat, not everyone can see your question, and other people might have the same question as you. So go ahead and browse through what other people have asked before asking your question, because someone might have already asked. So this training, I expect, will not last the entire hour. We're just going to do a brief overview of how to access and run static reports. And we're going to review the contents of some of the reports because they kind of fall into different categories. Some of them overlap in certain ways. And I will be sharing this slideshow as a resource for you to use because I did try to take down the most salient fields on each report, the ones that are the most important, and define the use of the report. And then I did give at least one suggestion on each report as to what it could be used for. And at the end, we'll have some time to answer questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start by looking at the reports screen. So this is the reports page of DAISI. And it might have logged me out here. Oh, it didn't. And so when you log into DAISI and click on the reports link, it'll take you to this page. And under this static section, that's where you're going to find all of the static reports that we are focusing on today. So I'm just going to show you how to run a pretty simple report. Let's choose the A1 extract. So in order to run a report, you just click on the link of the report that you want to run. It might take a couple of minutes for Pentaho to load. It's a pretty complex system. And then for each report, you'll have these drop-down menus up at the top. And these allow you to manipulate the different areas of your report that you want. So for this, there are essentially just two options. For most providers, you'll really only have access to your own provider's name. And then if your provider has several colleges within it, then you can choose the specific college that you're interested in. The attendance hours filter we talked about a couple of trainings ago, I believe, that just filters out the tests that were administered too early. And then you get to choose the output type that you'd like. For most of the reports, I recommend using an Excel spreadsheet. Just because it allows you to manipulate the results of your report in a way that these other file types don't. So when you're ready to run your report, you just click this View Report button, and then it'll download from your browser. So that's pretty simple there. So the A1 extract is a report that it contains student-level data on assessment and achievement. And the way that the data will appear on your report is that one row is equivalent to one student. So it's a really easy report to manipulate, do pivot tables on. You can even just filter for certain results that you're looking for. And it's a really easy way to just get a snapshot of the amount of assessment that your provider is doing, and also on the achievement that students are making on those assessments. So I highly recommend this report if you are the kind of person that likes to play around with your data and do your own visualizations. The AEFL certification of units report is more of a ready-made report, which means that it's not as easy to manipulate. You're going to find that there are a lot of extra rows here, and that it's formatted in a way that makes it hard to do analysis on. And the reason for this is that it's more of a snapshot of enrollment and attendance hours by instructional category and funding type. So this is a really good report to use if you maybe want to see what your enrollment is going to look like on any one of the state reports or on an NRS report, and which funding types are most commonly used in your provider. Then we have these cohort follow-up measure 3 and 4 reports. These are reports that are used to give a summary of, for this one, it's the GED or secondary credential that have been earned in your program. This is another student level report, so one row is equal to one student. So again, this is a really easy report to manipulate, do some really basic level analysis on, maybe help you see how many students have taken a certain portion of the GED or all portions. So I really highly recommend this if you are interested in GED or secondary credential outcomes in your program. And so this is essentially the same report that we just showed on the last slide, except this report shows the students that have entered a post-secondary program. So it's the same exact fields, but it's just showing you a different population of students. Then we have the EL Civics Report, and this is a student-level report that summarizes enrollment and achievement of students funded with the EL Civics or 4805 funds. So this could be really useful if you have an IELCE program and you want to just check on the achievement and enrollment in that category. Then we have a variety of GED reports, and they each show essentially the same information, but just formatted in a different way. So the GED 2014 series is one of several reports containing detailed and summary information about high school equivalency tests. So I recommend using these reports. Most of them are student level, so you can manipulate them, use those pivot tables, those filters, and whatever else you want to do. And this one gives a little bit more detail about the students who have taken the GED, what parts of it that they've taken, etc. And this is essentially the same report that we just talked about, but instead of showing just the results for this fiscal year, this one shows the data for all fiscal years. And this is, again, pretty much just another high school equivalency report. Another high school equivalency report, but this one is more specifically formatted to work for Excel. So again, just making it a little bit easier for you all to manipulate. And then we have the generation report. So the generation report is something that I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's a detailed report that shows the percent generation made towards each funding source. So you can actually also find this information under the funding source tab of DAISI. So you don't have to come all the way over here to get a report for it. But this shows just a little bit more information by adding in the teacher, course and class numbers, etc. And then we have the instructor cost allocation. So this shows generation by instructor. It's similar to the generation report, but it's more zoomed in on instructor level data. But you'll find a lot of the same information on either report. And this is sort of the similar to the last two, except it summarizes important information on the instructor level, such as professional develop hours and the cost of each professor. And this one also is a little bit more focused on outcomes because it has those NRS student goals on them. Then we have the NRS Core Performance Measures Report, and this is a snapshot of the current progress towards key NRS performance measures. And again, this is a student-level report, which I love because it can help you manipulate the data in order to zoom in on certain subpopulations. So it can help you focus on how instructors are achieving in comparison to one another. It can help you assess the distribution of students, level gains and attendance hours across instructors to see if there are any trends Then we have the professional development report. This is a pretty simple report. It just summarizes the professional development information for instructors. This can also be found on the professional development tab of the instructors portion of DAISI. But the benefit of this report is that it also gives you instructor contact information. So in case you want to have that handy for any phone trees or emergency contact that you might need to do with your instructors, this is a helpful report to have around. Then we have a program outcomes report by building. So this is just another outcomes-focused report that is actually stratified by building. So if you are a provider that uses multiple buildings, I assume that a lot of us are remote right now, so this might not be that relevant during this fiscal year, but it will help you see whether or not there are different outcomes or trends across different buildings in your program. Then we have the student hours report. Many of you are already familiar with this because you've been asking for the student testing report, and we are getting that to you as soon as possible. But this is a good substitute to use until that is restored. It tells you a lot of the same information that used to be available on the student testing report. It just doesn't recommend the next test to administer to a student. I think that's the biggest difference. And one thing that I want to mention about this report, so there's a color coding function of this report. So the blue, I believe, shows students that are ready to be post-tested, and the yellow is are students that are within 8 hours of being ready to be post-tested or something to that effect. And that color coding function is malfunctioning, but all other data on the report are correct. So feel free to download this report, but if you notice any weird things that are happening with the highlighting, I do apologize for that. That's another thing that we have our developers trying to fix. And then we have the transition and performance report. So this is similar to the NRS. Oh, I apologize. The NRS core performance report, that's more of a ready-made report. That's not a student-level report, as I was saying. So this is a student-level report. So one row of data is equal to one student, and it shows a lot of the information that is going to be on the NRS report. And it's helpful because it kind of allows you to play around with it, assess the outcomes of different various subgroups. So you can look at different age groups, different NRS entry levels, etc., and see how those outcomes might vary across those subgroups. And it's also just a good way to get a snapshot of what your NRS report is going to look like based on your current data. Then we have the verification report. So what's helpful about this report is that many of the tables, all of the tables that you see with an asterisk here, have all students in the program. So regardless of whether or not they have a certain funding source, whether or not they have sufficient attendance hours, and even whether or not they're error-free, they do appear on these reports. So this is a really good way to get a view of all of the students in your system, regardless or not of whether they appear on reports. And then finally, we have the Pandemic Student Detail Report. So this is a report that is specific to providers that have a whitelist in DAISI. And we create a whitelist when providers have an approved temporary testing waiver that you can apply for over the ICCB Adult Ed website, or if there is a statewide or region-wide restriction that affects in-person education. And it has a lot of the important information of a student, whether or not they are pandemic affected, whether or not they're missing a pre or post test due to the pandemic. And it kind of just gives you an idea of how that restriction is, or even just the pandemic in general, if you're using a temporary testing waiver, is affecting your program's data. So as always, we have the online help guide. I highly recommend taking a look at the frequently asked questions section, the training section has a list of all of the future trainings, and also that's where I'll be posting all of the recordings of trainings when those are available. As always, you have my information and the information of regional support, the DAISI help desk for when you're getting some of those error messages that you may not understand. And then, as always, if you are going to send a screenshot for questions, either myself, the help desk, or regional support, just make sure that you're redacting that student information by cropping, blurring, or just scribbling it out.